I think I've just gone live on the King's Head Facebook page, or at least I hope I have. I am not the most tech savvy person despite being in comms. So for me, the whole concept of a Facebook Live is always a bit daunting. But thank you so much to the King's Head for having me today. Um, do feel free to chip in anytime and ask questions, although I'm just chatting to the screen and so can't actually see any of you who are tuning in today. I'd be really happy to answer any sort of burning questions that you have about PR. You can see I'm set up today in my home office. I'd normally be chatting to you from our offices in Bloomsbury, but obviously we are all stuck at home and have been. So weird times, as I'm sure you're all finding. And I think everybody's been stuck in a bit of lockdown lethargy this week. I know that I certainly have been. So I hope that, it's Thursday. I hope that you are all staying cheery somehow and remaining positive. I know it's difficult. So let me just tell you who I am rather than me just chatting at you before we start this talk. So my name is Chloe, as you've probably realised if you've signed on today. And my background is actually that I'm an art historian. So I'm a specialist in 18th century drawings, which is very specific and not necessarily useful for my day to day. And I'd always absolutely loved the theatre and had gone to the theatre since a very young age. And I'm actually a trained singer and still carry on singing today. So I always knew I wanted to work in the arts, but not necessarily what element. And while I was studying at the Courtauld Institute of Art, I rather fell into PR and absolutely loved it. And I set up my company in 2010, originally named Chloé Nelkin Consulting. And we're a full service public relations and marketing agency, and we work across the arts. When I started the company, it was actually just in visual arts. And then after a couple of years, we ended up working on Vault Festival, which obviously I'm sure all of you are familiar with, and is a fantastic festival that would normally be running now, which is pretty gutting, but check out their social media for some of the great digital stuff they're doing. So we started working with Vault Festival, and that triggered a move to expand the company into cross arts, and that's what we've been since then. And that's really exciting for me. I absolutely love all of the arts, like I said, and so being cross arts mean there's a bit more variety in what we do and what we pitch to journalists. And those sort of diverse projects are reflected in the diverse passions of the team, who, like me, pretty much love all art forms and love getting stuck into different projects. Um, and something that people always ask me is, what does my day-to-day work life look like? Now, on a normal day, not during lockdown, not during COVID, I'd be running across town from meeting to meeting, meeting potential clients, meeting current clients to have catch-ups, maybe going into a rehearsal, popping into an exhibition to see it being installed, then maybe off to an opening night. So my days are normally incredibly varied. Um, Obviously, at the moment, that's slightly different. I think what's been really crucial for me during lockdown is keeping the structure for my day. Um, so, although we haven't been as busy as normal, of course we haven't. Nobody has during lockdown. I still, get up and I start work at the same time. And I think the one difference though is that I normally finish work at the moment around 6 o'clock, whereas usually my days would carry on until much later. Over the years, we've worked loads at the King's Head, so I was really excited to be asked to do this for them because I think this is a fantastic series, and I've watched lots of great people do these in the past, and we've promoted lots of shows that they've produced, and encouraged people to go to their amazing space in Islington. So just for anybody who's just joined, just to say hi, and to reintroduce myself, I'm Chloe and I'm the founder and director of Chloé Nelkin Consulting. And what we're going to be talking about today is what is PR, what's the role of a PR, and the differences between PR and marketing. So a huge thank you once again to the King's Head for inviting me to take part, and thank you so much to everybody who's tuned in. I really appreciate you taking the time this Thursday lunchtime to listen. And just a reminder once again, please do ask questions throughout. I'm really happy for you to make the most of having me here today. So let's kick off, first of all, with the fundamental question, what actually is PR? Now, don't be embarrassed if you don't have a clue, because not everybody knows what PR is, especially if you're just starting out in the industry. Fundamentally, PR is all about getting press coverage. And by press coverage, I mean getting journalists to write about your show, your project in the newspaper, on websites, anywhere really. So gaining exposure for the project you're working on. And this could come in a whole host of different forms. So maybe if you have a show coming up, for example, let's keep this theatre specific, press that comes out in advance of that production, maybe features such as interviews, self-penned pieces that somebody from the team has written, or e-interviews as well as phone interviews. Could also be getting the show included in roundups. So, for example, what's hot to see this week, making sure that the show is listed in key places, such as the Guardian Guide, Time Out, for example. And then once you've had all of that in advance of the show, so you've really encouraged people to build up the hype to make sure that your show is the one to see, you'll also have use your PR to invite reviewers to see the show. So gaining that critical opinion that will help build acclaim. Now, PR can be really useful for building the profile of a show. It can help to garner an audience, so to get people to come and see it, but it can also help to attract attention for future work. So, with PR, you need to be thinking slightly about the long term. It's not just about the here and now, because the one thing with PR is I mentioned encouraging an audience, but you can never guarantee that audience. So, PR may well result in sales, but can't guarantee sales, and that's really important to remember. There's also no guarantee of specific coverage. So while you may be absolutely desperate, for example, for a piece in The Guardian, sadly, no matter how great your PR is, they're not going to be able to promise you that can happen. And that's something important to remember. So treat PR as a profile building exercise, and you hope in turn that it leads to sales. Now, not everybody will want to hire a PR, and that's absolutely fine, and it's something you can do yourself. But one key thing to remember is that PR is time consuming. It's sadly not just as simple as sending one email and getting hundreds of responses back saying we'd love to cover your project. PR can take time sending emails, phone calls, meetings, and if you're working with a PR, they will have built relationships with journalists. They'll be talking to journalists all the time, and they'll be able to more easily put your show in front of those people. So, yes, definitely give it a go yourself. And due to budget restraints, lots of people do this. But just remember that obviously by hiring a PR, it can help free you up to concentrate on the rest of your production. And there are so many things to do that I think that's something really key to remember. So, something that I get asked a lot is how should people work with a PR? And I think that's really a great question. And it's a really kind question as well, because certainly when we work with people, we really like to be considered as part of their team. Just to remind you guys again, please do feel free to ask questions and chip in. If I say something you'd like expanded on, just pop a message over and I'll be happy to help. So, coming back to this idea of how to work with a PR, I think one of the key things that I always recommend people to do is set up an established pattern of communication. This works both ways, but it's really important that you understand when you're going to hear from your PR and how. So, for example, at CNC, we have a pattern of weekly communication where we send our clients updates every Friday afternoon. Now, more often than not, we're in touch during the week anyway. We're sort of as a request comes in, or if we have a query, we're sending over emails and getting on the phone. But even if it's been a quiet week and they say nothing's happened, which occasionally you do have weeks like that, every Friday we email our clients saying, not much has happened this week and this is why, or else we send them an email with a roundup of everything that's happened, a roundup of the press that's come out so that they've got everything in one place. And I think that that can be really useful for people. So obviously not everybody works in the same way that we do, and nor should they, but just make sure that you establish that pattern of communication straight off with your PR. I also think it's really key that if you're hiring a PR, you make clear what you want. Now, I touched on earlier the idea that there are no guarantees, but you can still let them know your hopes and dreams, your expectations. You can let them know your capacity. So, for example, should they be pitching you out for interviews? Who should they be pitching out for the interviews? The time scale of when things are happening. Don't be afraid to have a really honest conversation with your PR. And I think that will make your working relationship with them far easier. Also, as you've got concerns throughout the project, just be honest with your PR. Tell them if you're concerned about something. It's that open dialogue that I think can make a PR client relationship successful rather than trying to keep things yourself and feel you can't say anything. The other really important thing to say is there's no such thing as too much information. So feel free to go ahead and provide as much information as possible to your PR and also share ideas. You're probably the one in the rehearsal room, so if something comes to mind that day, don't be afraid to just let your PR know. And I can see the sun's going to hit me now. It's starting to look like, I'm in abroad in this incredible sunny environment, but sadly, no, still in the Home Office in North London. So yeah, tell your PR what's happening. Tell them if you have any ideas. And also let them know the timescale of the rehearsal. Are you having rehearsal photos taken? When's that? When are you having your production photos taken? Make sure your PR's in the loop. And equally, if a journalist gets in touch with you, don't be afraid to just forward that email or let that, yeah, don't be afraid to just forward that email, is what I meant to say, onto your PR and let them deal with it for you so you can get on with other things. And equally, if you have a connection with a journalist, do let your PR know. So I suppose that's PR in a nutshell. And obviously, we only have half an hour, so I'm kind of speeding through things here. But I hope that's a little helpful overview. But now the key thing is, if that's PR, what on earth is marketing? And they work really well in conjunction with each other, but they are very separate things. So a really, really simplistic way to explain it to you is that marketing often has a fee attached. So basically, you're paying for something to be actioned, like booking an advert or distributing a leaflet. So with PR, you may be paying to hire a PR firm, but they're not paying anybody to gain exposure. Whereas in marketing, yeah, again, you may be paying for a marketing firm, but they are paying to book an advert or they're paying to distribute that leaflet. So, like I just said, PR and marketing are connected though. They're very different, but they work really well in harmony, and that's really important. So, for example, at CNC, we offer both. So, we can offer integrated campaigns, which really allow the PR and the marketing to talk to each other. So it's important to remember you can use your PR as part of your marketing. So, for example, you've invited these press, you've got great reviews, so you want to use those reviews. You want to use pull quotes, you want to use your stars on any EPKs, anything you're doing. So make the most of that amazing press you've got. You can also intersect your campaigns. So, for example, you don't want to place a huge half-page advert in a newspaper where you know actually you've got a large interview that week because they'll work at cross purposes. You might as well spread things and get the breadth of your campaign. Another example of how they intersect is that you can share your press coverage as part of your social media campaign, shout about what people are saying about your show, and make sure that you're really benefiting from that great exposure. So I think what may be helpful is to give you some tips for how to form a great marketing plan. And the absolute key thing that I'd say to you is that a marketing plan can work really well with proper analysis. Data is absolutely crucial. And the most important thing is to remember to keep checking your data time and time again during the campaign. So think about what has and hasn't worked well in the past. Maybe you can have a chat with the venue to get their thoughts, but also think about previous shows you've done. Don't just treat this show as a separate entity. It's also really important to understand your target audience, and that's the same for press as well. Think about who your audience is. So, for example, if you're at a venue thinking about live work now, maybe you can speak to the venue about who their audience is. You could speak to the local council about who lives in the surrounding area. Make sure you understand who you're trying to reach. With marketing, I also find it can be really helpful to set goals. So, is your goal to increase your reach of the company? Is it to drive ticket sales? Is it to drive website traffic? Is it to drive merchandise sales? It could be a combination, it could be, different things to the ones I've just named. Make sure that you set yourself goals. Something else that you should always think about is ticket pricing. So maybe think about, do you want to have dynamic packaging? Maybe think about group discounts, but whatever you do, make sure you're not undervaluing your brand. Now, I'm aware that I may be throwing a lot of lingo at you, but feel free, like I said, to just ask questions as we go along, and I'd be happy to help. So, like I said at the beginning, a common mistake is not using data well enough and only remembering to look at the data at the end throughout. And please, whatever you do, check your data and keep an eye on things throughout your campaign. And remember, it's not just ticket sales when I say that. Make sure you look at ad clicks, social views, conversion rates. And also, if you see a spike in sales, um, make sure that you find out if that's linked to any marketing activity. And remember that your marketing should have a call to action as well. I think that's really important. What do you want people to do? Now, one top tip that I was told when I started out is that breadth is really important. So your audience needs to see something 3 times before they buy a ticket. So maybe they're going to see your great piece of press, they're going to then see the advert you've booked, and they're going to see a leaflet. But just think about making sure that you have that breadth in your campaign. And if your campaign is only short, you don't want to spread your resources too thinly and start too early. So also think about that budget and your campaign length. Now, I'm going to stop and answer one of the great questions that's come in, so I don't want to run out of time at the end. So thank you, Katie, for your question. So Katie says, in my opinion, in small budgets, would you spread the budget across PR and marketing, and that includes social, or just focus the budget on one aspect? Now, that's a really great question. So thank you, Katie. And I'm sure lots of people are thinking the same. I think it really depends on what your aims are and what you think you're able to do yourself. So social media, I think, is something that's really vital, and we'll come on to a bit later. But many of you will already be on social and will already feel that you have that organic ability to do social yourselves. Equally, many of you may have booked adverts and things. So with marketing, if you have a really tiny budget, you may feel able to just utilize that budget yourself. PR, like I said before, comes down to relationships. So, I mean, obviously, I run a PR firm, and we did PR originally. So, I will always sort of recommend, I think, that PR is time consuming, and using a PR firm, you're going to be able to benefit from their relationship. So, if you had to pick, I'd probably push you slightly towards PR, but really, I think both are absolutely crucial to a campaign. So, I hope that helped, and thank you so much for a great question. So, moving on, I think what can be quite confusing is what exactly is marketing. It's a phrase that encompasses so many different things. So, what I'm going to do is run through some of the things that can come under that marketing umbrella. And they really are extensive. And if you have lots of money, then the sky really is the limit with a campaign. So, coming under that marketing umbrella are some quite basic things that you sort of would do automatically as part of a production anyway. So, you've got photography. Now, by photography, you'd have your lead marketing images, maybe some rehearsal images, and your production images. So, you'll find with lots of these categories that we're talking through that come under marketing, there are then categories within them. So, also filming. You may want to think about trailer, for example. You may also want to look at filming some teasers for your social media. You may want to maybe do some short videos for social media, maybe vox pops. By vox pops, I mean filming people as they come out of the theatre, getting their opinion on how amazing your production is. So now you've got this great photography and great filming. You want to think about design. You want to use the photography potentially, or some special design to create your posters and leaflets. And now budget dependent design can really go a long way as well. So you could look at business cards, beer mats if you're in a pub theatre, you could look at t-shirts for the ushers. The sky really is the limit again here. So you've designed your posters and leaflets, now you may want to think about distributing them. So with distribution, you could either look to distribute across locations. So normally when we're at theatres or art centres or cafes, you'll probably notice that there are leaflet racks, and you can pay to have your leaflet placed in them. You may also want to think about what we call hand-to-hand distribution, which is basically somebody on the street handing out your flyer for you. And you could do that at specific times or outside specific places. So again, to reach the right audience. Now you'll want to talk to the venue about what marketing there is sort of at the venue that you can use. So for example, posters on the back of toilet doors. Could you attach something to the menus if they have a restaurant with your social handles on? Is there any front of house signage you can make use of? Does the venue have a newsletter? So make sure you have a discussion and find out what's available at the venue. So then I touched on venue front of house, but obviously then outdoor advertising is another whole thing. So you can get signage booked pretty much anywhere, but you'll be familiar with advertising on the tube, roadside, bus, phone boxes maybe. And this can be both digital and hard copy. Also under marketing, you could think about competitions. So giving away free tickets to a platform that they can run as a competition. You may want to think about email advertising. Now, you could have your own mailing list, but you can also pay to send to a database that somebody else holds. You may want to think about print advertising, so newspaper or a magazine, but it's worth bearing in mind that this can be quite pricey. Digital advertising, which can have a huge reach, especially at the moment while we're all stuck on our computers, constantly staring at the screen. And that would be placing ads on websites. So you'll be picking the website that you felt is most appropriate for the production that you're working on. In normal times when we're all going to the theatres, we'd be looking through programmes, and you may want to place an ad in somebody else's programme. You may want to think about partnerships. So are there local hotels, local shops, local restaurants around the theatre that you're going to be staging your show at that you could do something in partnership with them? I'm going to mention social media here, but I'm going to talk about it in a little bit more detail later. But you could look at organic social media as crucial, but also social media advertising. You could do advertising through Google, so something called Google Display Network, which is a whole nother talk. So I won't begin to explain that now, but I'm sure some of you are familiar with the phrase. You could look at working with ticket agents to sell your tickets. So while they take a commission, they'd also help promote the tickets for you if they're invested in that production. You could look at some grassroots outreach. So, for example, PS swaps, emails out to drama schools offering them discounted tickets. I think you're probably starting to get an idea that marketing really is endless. And again, if the money's there, you can start to be really creative and do quite exciting things. So, for example, grill ads, side of buildings, pavements, geo-targeting ads, in-app advertising that pop up onto people's phones when they walk into a specific street. You can do some really, really exciting things. And that's not to say on a limited budget you can't do exciting things as well, but obviously there are certain restrictions depending on cost. So next we're going to come on to social media. But just to say again, like, please shoot over any questions. I know that in one sense, PR and marketing are quite straightforward. They're trying to publicize your show, help you sell tickets. But in another sense, it can be a bit of a minefield. Um, Now, social media comes under that marketing umbrella and is absolutely crucial, I think, for building profile and for success. And I'm sure that you are as guilty as I am of sitting and scrolling through social media sort of in breaks between work, and it's very easy to lose track of time on it. And I think the amount that we're all on it shows you how important it can be. Now, social media done well is really time consuming, but can be really effective and great for brand awareness and can help you sell tickets if you get it right. So, what I'd recommend is aiming for regular, dynamic, and relevant content. And if your budget or your time limits you, then make sure that you go for quality over quantity. What you don't want to do is be putting out awful posts just for the sake of getting out one a day. Um, Now, social media is something that you can hire somebody to do for you. Like I said, it's time consuming. And if you don't have time, then you can look to use a firm to manage your social media accounts for you. You'll still have to be providing them with some content because, again, you're probably the one in the rehearsal room, but it will save you a lot of time. But you've probably all got experience on social media yourself, and so it's definitely something, if budgets are tight, that you can look after yourself. So, some key tips with social media, although again, it's quite a large area. Make sure you remember to use hashtags. I think that can be really crucial. Make sure you update your bio. It's something that everybody forgets, but you have that little bio on all of your platforms, and make sure you've got the correct ticket line, the correct show hashtag in there. Make sure it's not something that you did a few months ago. Make sure that you're following key people, so theatres, galleries, cultural venues, all of your cast and creatives, journalists who you want to engage with. Sounds really obvious, but I think we can often forget to refresh our followers and make sure we're following people that we're interested in. And in that sense, as well as keeping our followers relevant, make sure you stay relevant. So jump on memes, news trends, keep tapped in with what's happening. Something else I think is really key, and I notice this with who I like to follow personally, but make sure you balance your content between promotional and non-promotional content. If every single post that you put out is saying, buy tickets to my show, buy tickets to my show, people probably aren't going to remain engaged. So it's really important that, yes, you've got that call to action, but that not everything is sales focused. Keep your copy clear and to the point. Imagine that you are targeting the laziest reader and think, how can you get across to them? And if that lazy person can understand your message, then you're probably on the right track. Just a reminder again for anybody that's just signing in, we're chatting today about PR and marketing and looking at some of the differences. We've only got about 5 minutes left, but do feel free to just pop any questions over and I'd be really happy to answer them, particularly in this last section. So, just coming back to social media, one of the key things I think is to create a sense of FOMO, that fear of missing out. So, particularly if you've got a limited run, if tickets are selling out fast, make sure that you tell people to encourage them to book now. Make sure they book before it's too late. Something else that's really crucial, and it's funny because I think people can often avoid this as soon as their account becomes professional, but use emojis. Emojis can actually increase engagement by something like 48%, I think it is, on Instagram. So that's really a huge percentage. So make the most of that and make your posts look a little bit more fun. Then I mentioned about tracking data at the beginning of the marketing section of this talk, and tracking analytics on social is equally important. So have a think about who your audience are, how your posts are performing, and look at those analytics. Your social media is fantastic for presenting them to you, so it's really not that hard to just go onto the analytics section and have a peek. Now, make sure you use all of the available aspects. These social media platforms are changing all the time. It's incredible. So we're all already familiar with things like Insta Stories and IGTV. You'll have seen loads more reels in the last few months on Instagram, and a new recent feature is Instagram Guides. So take a look if you want to at the CNC feed. We've just launched some of our own Instagram guides of some of the great places that we work with. So they're just an example if you want to see how it works. But you can also do things like polls, quizzes, Twitter threads, set up a Facebook event. Really make sure to utilize all of those available aspects. And also, I think if you're having a brainstorm with your team, don't be afraid to create a bank of ideas to use during busy periods, especially in the run up to a show when you're running out of time. Having that bank of ideas that you've saved previously can be really helpful. And then the absolute key thing that I'd like to tell you to do, which I think loads of people forget, is engage with your audience. If somebody's taken the time to reply to you or put a comment on one of your posts, make sure that you reply to them or like that comment. Show them that you're engaged with what they're saying and that you're grateful for their time. So, in an absolute nutshell, and we haven't had very long today, so we've really had to speed through, but there's some of sort of the key explanation, I suppose, of what PR is and what marketing is, and some of the differences between the two of them. So just sort of to give you a tiny bit of a recap, PR, basically, you may be paying a firm to do something for you, to do your PR, but they aren't paying anybody for coverage. Coverage is down to the opinion of that publication and that journalist. Marketing, you're paying the firm, but that firm is then paying for a service, whether booking an advert, booking an e-shot, booking to run a distribution campaign for you. So that's a very, very fundamental difference. Marketing is much more easily trackable. If you're booking a digital advert, you're going to be able to track that advert. So somebody has just popped up a question. Thank you so much. So that is, could you give an example of 5 marketing PR priorities you could focus on for an average Fringe show? Oh, now that is a really tricky question, but thank you. So the priorities really, I think, do depend on the show. And so, Alex, I'm so sorry not to answer this properly, but I think what is so important with your marketing and PR campaign is that it is specific and bespoke to your show. So I think the 5 priorities that I would probably say to you, number 1 would be working out who your audience is. That's really crucial. I think number 2 would be working out what your goal is for the marketing and PR. So, I mentioned before about increasing reach or ticket sales, or is it about profile? Is it about reviews? I think number 3 would be making sure that your marketing and your PR are intersecting with each other. That's a huge priority. Oh, it's very tricky to give you 5 actually. I think number 5 would be working out if there are specific audiences that you want to reach. So again, coming back to that, who is your audience idea, but working out those specific targets. And I think number 5 would just be that if you're working with a PR, to make sure that they are really passionate, to make sure that you are selling the show in the best way possible. So sorry, Alex, I think I kind of dodged your question, but I also hope, oh dear, I also hope that by dodging your question, it shows that actually PR and marketing does need to be quite bespoke. And while I can talk about what they are in a general sense, you need to really think about those campaigns and design them specifically for your show. So, guys, we've only got about 2 minutes left today. So, in case I run out of time, I just want to thank you all for joining. It's really great to see so many of you logged in, and I really appreciate you taking the time. And this great scheme that's being run by the King's Head is every Thursday at 1 o'clock live on Facebook. And they've got some really exciting speakers taking part who you can learn loads from. So, make sure that you sign in every Friday and have a listen to what people are saying. And if you want to check out who's been before, you can watch these previous hashtag KHTOnline sessions on the King's Head blog and YouTube channel. So I definitely recommend checking them out. I know that I've seen some great talks. So I think we've got 1 minute left. So just to say, thank you so much again. PR and marketing are really crucial for your shows. And I'm not just saying that because I run a PR and marketing firm, but whatever CNC gets involved in, we're really passionate about that project doing well. And I think with great PR and marketing on board, it really can make your production fly. So I hope that you've all gained a little bit of insight, and I hope that you may consider either investing in PR and marketing or making PR and marketing a priority for you as you move forwards with your campaign planning. And fingers crossed that we'll be able to all meet up in an actual venue before too long. So thank you again. Have a great afternoon, and yeah, hope to see you all soon. Thanks so much. Bye.